Well, there's breaking news coming in at this hour. We're learning that the US Treasury Secretary has posted on social media platform X as the US has issued temporary waiver for Indian refiners. That's right, there's important information we're tracking for Indians as the US has said, and I quote, that anticipate that India will ramp up US oil purchases. The crucial point here is the fact that the US has in fact announced a 30-day waiver for Indian refiners to buy Russian oil. That's right, the US has said, and I quote, that India license authorizes Russian oil stranded at sea. Bessent has said, and I quote, that the measure will alleviate pressure caused by Iran and that will not provide significant financial benefit to Russia. Now, an important statement coming in from the United States, as the United States has also gone on to add that India is an essential partner of the United States. Well, on this, my colleague Himanshu joining us on the broadcast. Himanshu, walk us through the details, but understanding that this is major relief for Indians.
The day the war started, the price of the crude oil Indian basket was around $68-69 per barrel. But we do know that yesterday the Brent crude oil price jumped to above $85 per barrel level, which is very disturbing. And of course, the pressure on the Indian oil import bill, of course, is rising. And that is the context in which the American government's this relief to India needs to be seen. This, of course, comes also at a time when India is struggling also to import gas. Remember, Russia has one of the largest resources of natural gas and is also one of the biggest exporter of natural gas. So on the front of both crude oil and also on natural gas, I think this opens up a new space for India to actually fill up its reservoir. And of course, the question that we're being raised about the exigency plan that India has, this is a big shot in the arm for India. And now we should expect more deals, more import from Russia, because this has been a bone of contention between India and the United States. And there was a time when President Trump had imposed a 25% penalty on India because India was importing oil from Russia. But now when the prices are going up and the pressure on India's oil import bill is rising, this is, of course, a very, very big relief for a country like India, which imports around 85% of its domestic needs from the international market. And also the fact that Strait of Hormuz, the movement of the cargo ships carrying oil and gas has been very, very badly affected. And considering the fact that Qatar has in fact even stopped the production of LNG, was of course a big challenge for India. But now with this relief, it is very clear now that the Indian oil marketing companies and government of India will scale up the effort to increase the import of oil now from Russia, which of course will be at a much lower rate than the rate at which we have been buying so far.
Himanshu, let's distill it down for viewers. I want to understand in terms of policy. The United States has repeatedly spoken against India buying Russian oil. Where exactly does that policy stand at the moment?
Well, I mean, there is a relief because the situation has changed now. And now there is a thinking that the war that is now going on in Middle East, West Asia, was largely initiated by the US. And I remember the leading India's oil and gas economists have repeatedly been raising this issue. The time has come when India should go to the US and say that this is a war that has been started by the United States. And because of that, the price of crude oil has now jumped beyond $85 per barrel. So the time has come where it is becoming impossible for India to meet with this emerging rising cost of the crude oil. And so I think now finally with this pressure building up, US perhaps has understood that a country like India, which imports 85% of its domestic needs from international market, cannot cope up with a price range which is now above $85 per barrel. And that forms the context in which this relief has been given. The idea also is the fact that India is an emerging power now, and there is also a sense that US wants to help India, which it calls a strategic partner. In fact, yesterday, the Deputy Secretary of State of the United States had said that India-US ties are now at a very, very critical and strategically important moment.
Absolutely.
And that forms the context in which this relief has been given to India.
Right, absolutely, Manshi. In fact, hold on to that thought. We also have a guest joining us on the broadcast. We have Peter McGuire. He's the CEO of XM Australia. He's joining us on the broadcast. Peter, thank you so much for speaking to NDTV. I want to understand from you, there's an important statement that's just come about from the United States in which Scott Bessent has gone on to say that there is a 30-day waiver for Indian refiners to buy Russian oil. How exactly are you viewing the implications of this statement?
Well, good morning. It's just come across the wire and I'm very conscious of it as far as Scott Bessent's 30-day time frame, and it's certainly going to be very, very beneficial naturally for India, and I feel as though that this will probably stretch to other countries as well. We understand the import market of what India primarily imports from an energy perspective, and Scott Bessent is demonstrating, and it's very interesting that he's chosen Russia. So they're a very, very big player in the oil market, as we know, and like the Saudis. So it's beneficial, and I'm sure that there were many deals put together before this actual Iran situation, which happened and started last Saturday.
To understand, the Strait of Hormuz is a big bone of contention. We know the fact that, Iran has said that it specifically allows certain countries and their ships to pass through it. How exactly are you viewing the economic implications of that, given the fact that, it controls about 20% of all the exports of the oils and, of course, the LNG also?
Well, exactly. Doha as far as LNG through Qatar. If you're looking at the markets, I mean, the markets are very, very strong at the moment. You've got Brent crudes running at 83.60, NYMEX crude at 79.18. They've both been enormous run-ups over the last week. So as far as oil pricing, this is a major concern. Naturally, first off, President Trump has said that from an insurance standpoint, he would solve a lot of problems as far as the insurance situation with vessels. And this next part, of course, with his own armada, there being the US Navy, they'll be able to offer wonderful protection for all vessels that'll sail through that choke point. So again, it's very fluid. We're just seeing how it all plays, and I'm sure that we don't want to see $100, $120 oil in the short run. So as you're seeing, Scott Bessent has taken the necessary action to try and keep oil prices contained.